I have had the worst flight experiences, and I can't really blame anyone but myself, but because as a student traveling on a budget, I've had the habit of really booking the cheapest flights that I can get, and then just suffering the consequences after. So I remember once having to hold all my luggage with me on a shaking plane that had like maybe less than 10 people as I went to an island in the Philippines. So it really is such a treat for me when I get to travel with my family, because then I get to finally book a premium airline. And when we're talking about premium airlines, Cathay Pacific is definitely top of mind. It's always been a top international and premium airline. However, the problem is, in the past few years, it's actually suffering a decline in its quality of services, and it's now actually suffering a net loss. So the question now is, how can we actually return Cathay Pacific into a state of profitability? And this is the question that we are very happy to answer for you today. Good morning, everyone. I am Isa, and here with me today are Kyle, Marco, and Adrian.
Hi.
Together, we're from the University of the Philippines, and we're very excited to share with you our recommended strategy for Cathay Pacific called Take Off and Soar High.
Through this campaign, we plan to both take off and soar high the business. It is a 3-year campaign where we basically refurbish the business and make it more profitable. Through Take Off, we will utilize data analytics to reduce operational inefficiencies, mostly in the maintenance section. Through Soar High, we plan to reposition the branding of the company to one of more premium aspect to increase revenue yield per passenger. And through this campaign, we believe we can not only make Cathay Pacific more profitable, but also allow it to be sustainable in the next long-term 10-15 years.
But first, let's take a look at where your business is today. So right now, Cathay Pacific is a top Hong Kong-based international airline. We see really the scale and power of Cathay Pacific as it operates more than 200 aircrafts. It caters to more than 190 destinations with 33,000 employees. So it has different lines of businesses aside from the passenger flights. It also goes into cargo, catering, and other services such as terminal handling and so on. However, we see a problem right now because in the current 2016 to 2017 financial year, it actually suffered a loss of 575 million Hong Kong dollars. So coming from this net loss, let's take a look at where the business actually wants to be.
So where we want Cathay Pacific to be is basically to return to a state of profitability and sustainability. When we look into it, it just basically means two things. One, we need to optimize our cost structure and also be able to make sure that we increase our revenues, and particularly the revenues per customer. And how we plan to do this is it will allow us to improve our industry rankings due to the relative decline in the past 2016 to 2017 period, and be able to maintain our premium branding and vis-a-vis instead of just going down to becoming a more economy class airline. And how we plan to do this and solve this is,
so we have to really bridge this result gap. And to do this, we are faced with a problem statement for today. So how can Cathay Pacific actually achieve a 10% net profit margin over the next 3 years? This is the question that we're answering for you today.
so let's now deep dive into the first aspect, Take Off, right? And Take Off is all about improving the data analytics and the technology of the company to improve its cost structure. But before we go through Take Off, I want to ask yourselves a question. Why do we have this issue to increase profitability? So when we look into it, we understand this metric of break-even load factor of Cathay is at a starting 124% of total seats. And looking at this figure alone, it shows that the business is not sustainable. Meaning, because two things, even though we improve our capacity to 100% of all seats, we're still at a loss. And how we plan to improve this is through two main reasons. One is by increasing our revenues to make sure that the price per seat will be able to match the costs. And secondly, to lower our overall costs so that we have less cost to break even for. Right? So our current situation is not sustainable, and we need to drive down this 124% figure lower. We're looking into the two numbers. So first we have to increase revenues, and in doing so, we understand that revenues is a factor of both price and the number of customers. On the number of customers, we understand that it is increasing over the past few years. So the number of seats being booked is increasing, and there's a healthy capacity of 85%, which matches the industry standards. But when we look into the price that each customer pays, we understand that it has been actually decreasing due to the shift of two major reasons. One, due to the shift from business class to economy class of Cathay, and secondarily, due to the promotions that Cathay Pacific has been setting up and the seat sales that they have been setting. So we need to make sure that we find ways to increase the price we charge per customer to increase our revenues. And on the other hand, the next question that begets us is, how do we decrease our costs and make sure our cost structure is efficient? And the cost structure, we need to do this because we believe increasing revenues alone cannot decrease the break-even load factor of 124%. No matter how much we try to increase revenues, it may not be as efficient. So we also need to look into decreasing costs, even more so than McKinsey's plan. Right? McKinsey plans to reduce the cost by $4 billion or 4 billion Hong Kong dollars in the next 3 years. But we believe this is just 1.5% per annum of total costs. And we need to even further break down costs and decrease costs to be able to make sure that we are operating at break even and we will be sustainable. So now let's just deep dive into the next question, right? So under the cost structure, what else should we focus on? So we believe we should still focus on maintenance costs. And why is that? So their company cost structures go fuel, payroll, maintenance, and others. And McKinsey is actually portrayed into decreasing payroll costs already. They plan to lay off 600 different employees for them to be able to decrease the cost of the business. And looking into the fuel costs, however, we understand that is a bit uncontrollable. No matter how we try to hedge the fuel costs, we cannot predict the future in the next year, in the next 2-3 years. And how the economy will be changing. So we believe that maintenance cost is a great factor, a great environment for us to improve on and to build our efficiencies on. So the potential to improve the service quality and leverage on the technological aspects of the business can be laser focused on the maintenance cost. And this will allow us to make sure that our maintenance and operations throughout the next 6, 12, 18-month periods will be able to be decreased because of our technological capabilities. And so that now that we know we want to lower down maintenance costs, and they are a big portion of our total cost structure, let's understand why do we actually want to go into data analytics. Data analytics, through different case studies by McKinsey and other consulting clubs, actually show that it decreases total cost by 15% of major businesses. So this is true for the train industry, the railway industry, shipping industry, and of course, the airline industry. So we plan to go into data analytics and be able to just mine the data that we get from the big data from the customers and the maintenance aspect to be able to improve when we should be able to repair our airplanes, how we should actually do so, and which particular parts are actually the ones broken down. So we don't have to replace big aspects of the airline, just small parts that we can look into. So we need to leverage on these potential efficiencies of data analytics.
Okay, so Kyle talked to you about takeoff, which is literally about taking off inefficient costs by leveraging on new technologies, particularly on big data. Now I'll go through Soar High, the next part of our strategy, which is all about increasing our revenues, especially our revenue yield per passenger, by targeting a very specific group of these businessmen from Greater China. So first, we ask ourselves, in targeting these people, why should we actually continue to position ourselves as premium versus going into, say, a low-cost carrier type of model? So first, let's take a look at Cathay Pacific as a company and as a brand. We see that really it has a premium positioning, which was able to work to its advantage over the past few decades. Premium positioning is really at the core strength of Cathay Pacific. We don't see it going into the low-cost carrier business model because of high competition and because this definitely dilutes the brand equity that was the main factor for success of Cathay Pacific. What we see actually is that the strength of Cathay Pacific comes from its high brand equity and high quality service. However, over the past year, this quality service has declined. So what we have to do is actually improve this quality of service in order to sustain our strong premium branding. Next, we look into why we should actually target the business class. So a while ago, Kyle talked about how now the sales mix of Cathay Pacific is actually shifting towards the economy class. So we see that there is a decrease in revenues because of this decrease in passenger yield. So right now, Cathay Pacific actually increased its capacity in the economy class by moving from 9 to 10 seats. And we see that these economy seats are actually consistently at a high occupancy rate, meaning despite more seats in the economy class, these are continuously filled by passengers. And what we see now is a lower occupancy rate in its business class, which was previously its strength. So what we actually have to do is increase the occupancy rate from our business class in order to increase our passenger flight revenues. Now, looking into the business class, we see a great potential, particularly in the business class in the Greater China region. We see right now that the China region is actually the largest air travel market in the world. The case also mentioned the top 10 of the busiest routes right now are in Asia, and we see that a lot of the inbound and outbound routes are coming to and from China right now. And this is driven mainly by the increasing purchasing power, especially from this business class. And we see an even greater opportunity for this in the future, given the Belt and Road opportunity. So our insight is that we should target businessmen and be the first to talk to them, particularly from the Greater China region, in order to really leverage on these opportunities for growth from the company. So we talked to you about Takeoff, which is all about reducing and optimizing costs using data. And now we talked to you about Soarhai, which is all about going back to our premium branding in order to increase our passenger yield. Now let's talk about our implementation plan, which we'll go through with Adrian.
I think I can safely say that everyone here in this room has actually had a bad experience when it comes to flying. And personally, I'm actually scared to death when it comes to flying because of all the inefficiencies. But just like what Isa mentioned, in the Philippines, it's actually very popular to actually adopt and go for low-cost carriers. But my main problem with that is that I really need an airline that I can trust with high-quality service, and that is actually very convenient. So no delays, great staff, and something that can really communicate and personalize the experience for me. And this is why we're very excited for Cathay Pacific and its opportunity to turn itself once again to its former glory. So, as Isa mentioned, we're going to talk to you about Takeoff and Soarhai. But how do we exactly envision this? So let's first go to our implementation plan of Takeoff. Takeoff is all about one thing, and it's actually implementing what we call Foresight. So Foresight is our data analytics program, wherein what it's going to be technically our eye in the sky. And what it is basically doing is that we're actually going to be improving, one, how we collect data. Number two is actually how do we analyze data. And number three is actually how we're going to be acting upon it. So how we imagine this is that, number one, we're actually going to make sure that we improve the sensors and all of the things and the major parts and components in all aspects of the business. Number two is that we plan to use all of these big data and analyze this real-time data in data centers and effectively communicate this to all parts of the supply chain. But how do we exactly imagine this? We imagine this actually having great impact in two of the main things. Number one is repairs and replacements. So, like what Kyle mentioned, in a case study by McKinsey, they have actually proven that actually improving the data analytics that is being mined by the industry can reduce operating costs by 15%, specifically in the railway industry. This is how we envision Cathay Pacific mindset should be when it comes to using data analytics to improve efficiencies. So number one is actually reducing repair lag time. So as you can imagine, you have a sensor and tracking what's happening during the flight. But what you want to do is that, for example, there's a problem that one of the machines are actually about to be broken upon landing. So what we want to do is that the control center would actually know exactly that it's actually breaking down mid-flight, and they can actually contact a local supplier so that when it lands, it can be repaired immediately in order to avoid delays. And what we hope in the future is actually to improve this data analytics so that it will be capable of actually predictive analysis, where it's not just condition-based, wherein when there's a problem, you repair it, but actually you can actually forecast when a plane parts is about to break down so that you can actually properly recondition it. The next one is actually about optimizing flight schedules. So again, the main point is inefficiencies and delays. So what we want to do is actually spearhead an initiative between the One World Alliance that we are part of, wherein it's going to be a shared-based cloud platform where we take where we fully capitalize Foresight in order to predict flight delays and weather and seasonal data. So how you can imagine is that each airline company has actually big data when it comes to weather forecasts and flight delays and flight controls. And what we want to do is actually converge this data into our Foresight analytics and then process it so that we can actually forecast better which flight paths can predict what are the delays and which forecasts and we can actually predict the weather forecasts better. So Takeoff is all about utilizing data analytics, improving repair and replacement, and optimizing the schedule experience. Now I turn you over to Marco to talk about Sorai and how we actually improve the revenues of our company.
In Takeoff, we introduced Foresight, our big data analytics program that will help us improve our operations and reduce our costs. Now let's go to Sorai, wherein we will position Cathay Pacific as a premium airline and target businessmen from Greater China through quality and premium service. So we will do this first by actually using the tagline of Fly High with Cathay. So to be able to do this, we first need to actually really improve on our premium services. So we can do this through three things. First is our continuous training program to our staff, to our pilots, and to our cabin crew, making sure that they can actually deliver the premium experience that they promise our consumers. So an example would be training our cabin crew on how to actually deal with clients who have lots of demands, or to clients who are asking for things that we currently don't have in the plane. Being able to communicate to these consumers will actually make them feel that they are actually valued as business class flyers. Next is a performance-based reward system to further incentivize our staff as well. So we can be able to track this through in-flight feedbacks or surveys. So if one of the passengers see that one of the cabin crew is actually performing her job well, then we will be able to give her some incentives, such as probably a free flight or a free stay in a country. And finally, to be able to utilize again Foresight, our data analytics, to be able to again reduce flight delays, and at the same time improve the maintenance of our aircraft. Now that we have actually improved on our operations, how do we actually communicate this to our consumers? So to be able to communicate this, we will offer additional add-ons to our product. So one example would be offering different add-ons or one ticket that can offer airlines, sea and land travel. So imagine you're a businessman and probably a head of an SME in China trying to reach and enter another country, say the Philippines or Indonesia, and you don't know anyone in that country. So what you can do is just actually buy a ticket that covers both land, sea and air. So when you get to the airport, Cathay will already handle your land travel to that certain area, or if you need to travel to probably a different island, Cathay Pacific can already handle that for you, giving you the total package that you need, a hassle-free experience for you to be able to do your business. Next is how do we actually engage them in flight. It's not enough that we just communicate to them, offering them some kind of ticket, but it's more important to actually engage them inside the plane. We will be able to do this through Foresight, our data analytics program that can mine all these data from our loyalty program and actually create and curate a personalized experience. So imagine you fly into Cathay Pacific and you already have your favorite glass of wine ready in your chair, or probably a blanket and a pillow already ready in your chair, because we know that that's what you want to do in the plane, and probably we have already prepared different TV programs that you like as well. And finally, how do we actually sustain this? It's not enough that we just give you the in-flight experience, but we actually value your comments as well. So we will, again, improve on the compensations that we do for the inconvenience that we cause you as well. So we will be able to do this. We're actually offering them free miles that they can use to travel in the future. Now, for our timelines and implementations, we can see that phase 1 will actually happen immediately. So we will develop Foresight as soon as possible, place our sensors, so that by year 1, we can already create our technology with One World. And phase 2 will happen also immediately, improving our HR program so that by year 1, we can already deliver the value that we promised our consumers. And for our risks and mitigations, we have identified 2 major risks. What if there is a low revenue from the business class? Then we will be able to easily shift this by offering our add-ons as well to the economy class, thus be increasing our revenues per person. And what if there's a stagnant growth for passenger flight? We will be also offer probably cargo solutions to businessmen as well.
But how does it all tie back to the revenues of the company and profitability? When we look into it, we have 3 key impact slides. The first one is that it will break even load factor reduced to 85% instead of 124%. 18% will come from the revenues impact and 21% will come from the cost impact. And we believe passenger yield will also increase from $0.54 per mile per passenger to $0.65, a 20% increase. And lastly, incremental profit will become $35 billion total incremental over the 3-year period. And how this actually is shown is through this basically current and projected analysis, wherein we believe that we can lock in an additional $30 billion in revenues and reduce $5 billion in expected losses, which means that we have $35 incremental profit over the 3-year time period. And when we look into the numbers, we realize that our profitability will be increasing, and by year 3, $15.5 billion will increase. Thank you, and we're now ready for your questions.
Now 15 minutes Q&A session. So just please ask questions.
Right. Okay. Maybe I start first. Now you mentioned that you would like to ask the customers to pay more because you wanted to charge higher price. But for airline industry, passengers are actually quite price sensitive, right? So how can you convince the customer that the price that they're paying is actually much more than the other airlines, and they are still willing to pay?
Thank you very much for that question. So we did consider that customers tend to be price sensitive when it comes to their tickets. So the first thing we considered is, who are we actually talking to? We're talking to businessmen right now who have higher purchasing power and are actually looking for convenience, reliability, safety, and a hassle-free trip. So considering all these, we believe that Cathay Pacific will be able to give them all this and give them a value-added service that other airlines cannot provide. So when it comes from, for example, Greater China businessmen, what we're actually envisioning is that they will be able to book business class tickets that are able to offer them these value propositions, but also at the same time give them, for example, the point-to-point transportation that they need, meaning from the hotel in China to the hotel in Hong Kong. We can be the #1 provider, and we can even expand this once there's the Belt and Road opportunity already, giving them a ticket that not just has airfare but also the ferry and land transportation as well.
And I would just want to add that our particular price strategy is not basically, it won't be one lump sum amount when we'll just charge higher and then all of these services will be unlocked. It's basically, you have these current business class flight for a certain passenger, and then you could add on these services based on your need, your preference, and these will actually be extra revenue streams for Cathay Pacific. So it would be dependent and variable as well to the taste of the consumer, and we believe because of it being so, we would be able to increase revenues and understand the price sensitivity of consumers, and as well their ease of convenience as well.
And lastly, just to wrap up, I think we just want to clarify that we're not increasing prices for any of the tickets of Cathay Pacific. What we want to do is really just change the sales mix. So from just purely economy class doing well, we want to increase occupancy rate to the business class, where they were actually strong in the past few decades. Thank you.
Okay, to jump on one thing, the two very strong fixed costs of an airline are salaries and oil. You kind of brushed over the fact that oil you can't control. Clearly you can with hedging, if you do it correctly. And secondly, staff costs as well. I observe as a consumer and as someone who reads the press that Cathay staff is not strong. So could you just address those 2 points there? One is, you can't control oil costs, how are you going to do that? Secondly, how are you going to improve morale within the Cathay organization?
Sure. So actually in our discussion, we believe that when we look into the analysis, the fuel costs and payroll costs, or the staff costs, are important as well. And when we look into the fuel costs and the payroll costs vis-a-vis the McKinsey plans, we realize that McKinsey actually planned on these two aspects. And so how we try to improve on McKinsey's plan was, one, on the payroll, making sure that we don't only decrease the amount of employees, but also make sure that we train them, we improve the relationship of these staff, the cabin crew, to the clients, to the consumers in the planes, and making sure that it's performance-based and not only salary-based in terms of their compensations. On the fuel cost, however, what we tried looking into is understanding the fuel mix and how the hedging, it was actually the reason for their losses this year. So when we looked into the numbers on the fuel costs, we realized, yeah, it's correct. It's around 30% of the business costs already. And the good thing about fuel is actually in the next few years, the progression is it might keep decreasing because of America's shale oil business, because of the OPEC going, the issues happening there. And that's why we decided to not really concentrate on that too much, because the cost structure might actually decrease in favor of the airline companies. And the hedging strategies might basically just be a simple adjustments in terms of the valuation and the accruals that the company, the finance experts in the company should be doing. Thank you.
I think you mentioned about the two phases. During the phase one, you are talking about the takeoff. Also, you mentioned about the maintenance cost. Okay, based on the material that we know that the safety ranking of cafe actually dropped from number 1 to 12. Okay, if we're going to reduce the maintenance cost, do you think we will end up
Completely.
So thank you for that question. Actually, the reason why we're very excited for what we're proposing is that it actually accomplishes two things. Not only does it not only does it reduce maintenance costs, but it actually improves the quality of service and safety that we can provide. Like what Kyle mentioned. So how does that exactly work? So by actually improving how we mine the data, we can actually correct any deficiencies or repairs and brokens and make sure that all of our planes are actually functioning at its highest level. And number two is that actually optimizing flight schedules. So one of the things that we proposed is that we are actually going to be capitalizing on the One World Alliance, wherein how we envision this is that each partner company would actually, up to the extent that they're willing, is to share information so that we can better forecast two things. Number one is that the projected flight delays in certain airports, and number two is the projected weather forecast, so that we can better communicate to our customers. So that's one way of actually improving our quality service, and by being better at predicting repairs and actually being better at predicting whether it would break down, then we can actually reduce costs by first reconditioning them before they actually break down. And number two is actually, like for example, knowing that it's about to break down, then rather than outsourcing and having the repairs shipped away to the certain country, what you can do is call a local supplier, which is going to be cheaper, and actually repair it in the country themselves. So that's the reason why we chose this strategy.
Talking about maintenance. Now, you mentioned about putting the sensors and all this. Actually, those are already built into the system already, and then you cannot do it or alter it by yourself. So how can you implement it? Your strategy. And secondly, the IP rights is actually in the OEM's hands. So as an operator, you cannot modify all this without their approval. In fact, all this are being monitored by themselves. So how would you like to suggest to move forward with your proposals?
So how we actually viewed it is this particular proposal. We knew that it's already in like the middle stage, wherein a lot of the progressions in the industry of technological capabilities is actually happening already. So a big portion of our recommendation, to answer your first question, is mostly geared towards the predictive algorithms and being able to understand the future forecast of maybe repairs and maintenance as well. And we believe that's a clear delineation of what the industry is currently doing and versus what it could still do and what it could still be going towards. And this actually unlocks a lot of possibilities in terms of potential costs, potential repair teams where we can distribute them around, and being able to just be in the know of what actually is happening to all the extensive capital expenditures, the planes of Cathay Pacific. And to answer the second question.
Well, just to build on what Kyle was saying, so right now we see actually that the trend is that most aircraft and other transportation providers are doing conditional repairs. So this means that when something breaks down, they know how to repair it and they do it in real time. But what we're seeing is an opportunity and the possibility in predictive repairs. This is something very new that we've actually researched on previously. And predictive repairs allows you to actually really see where the normal problems arise in your aircraft, how you can prevent this, and how you can reduce your lag time when it comes to these repairs.
And understanding the difficulty maybe of the regulation, the IPs with the ODMs, we have to understand that we are in a client-customer relationship with the ODM manufacturers. And the airline industry is one of the biggest industries in the world. And if we are able to leverage on that relationship with them and be able to convince them that their items, their inventory would be able to develop and improve our industry and we'll be major clients on them, we believe that we would be able to be able to just fix our operations, be able to utilize their resources, their assets, in improving all the airplanes within the inventory of Cathay Pacific.
And just to build on what Kyle and Lisa mentioned, what we really want to do is this change in mindset of actually really being at the forefront of predictive analytics as a company. So what we envision is that we want Cathay Pacific to actually lead the conversation and actually talk to all of our partners to actually make it happen that when this predictive analytics will happen, we're going to be at the ahead of the game, so that it's going to be improving the maintenance. And we believe that, like what we mentioned before, that is actually happening in other industries as well. So we believe that the first step is actually leading the conversation, and we want Cathay Pacific to be the one that's at the forefront of this innovation.
We could also utilize a One World Alliance, which they founded and are actually part of currently, and to being able to have a stronger bargaining power against with the ODM partners or suppliers, to be able to make sure the industry changes towards that track, because it is all for the better, for the company themselves, for the airlines, for the passengers, and for the ODM manufacturers, because it's extra sales for them as well.
How do you see the competition from those budget airlines? Because now seems like in your proposal you never touched that part.
Right. So thank you for that. We did a while ago talk about why we wanted to go into a premium positioning. So we do see the rise in low-cost carriers, especially here in Asia. And there is that option for them to also adopt a low-cost carrier model. However, the reason why we don't see them going into this business is because there is already a high competition and saturation when it comes to these low-cost carriers here in Asia. And when we think about the target market of Cathay Pacific, it's really not the budget travelers. Like with my story a while ago, Cathay Pacific is really more for premium travelers, be it families with higher disposable income, businessmen, people going on vacation who can spend more, versus low-cost carriers who cater more to budget travelers. So we see that though low-cost carriers may be eating a portion of the market, if they continue to build on their premium positioning and target the right people where they're really strong at, then they'll be able to really grow and succeed as a business.
And the beauty of our recommendations is that we are targeting the business class, and compared to the economy passengers, the business class will gain a higher profit margin. So we're actually being able to capitalize on this, getting them on board again, and making them transfer and move again to the business class will increase our revenues. At the same time, will give us a competitive advantage against our competitors. So again, our LCC competitors cannot offer the same value that we offer, because again, they want to keep their costs down for them to be able to offer their prices low. But us, what we value is actually the experience. So we can actually still offer the same premium experience, but at the same time charge a premium to it that our business class can actually avail of.
I would also want to talk about the two major opportunities that going to premium will unlock for the company. The first one Marco talked about, it's basically higher profit margins and even higher revenues due to the additional value-added services we'll provide. And secondarily, though, we understand that the China market, the SMEs and the businesses that are growing in China, plan to expand the Asia Pacific, is exponential. And we believe that by going into the China market, talking to the businessmen there, being their go-to provider, will allow us to increase our revenues in that particular premium segment and be able to bring these businessmen into the Asia Pacific wherever they want, and bring their cargo additionally as well, if it becomes a potential added on investment in terms of their relationship with these businessmen.
If you look at implementing your strategy, what major or key hires do you think you need to make? And what changes do you need to make in sort of the personalities and the organisation within Cathay to sort of effectively implement your strategy?
So I think the main change we want to make is really a very strong analytics and IT team. So that definitely shows from foresight. We really want to be able to be at this forefront of innovation, like what Adrian mentioned. So having this very strong IT and analytics team is really key to our success. And the next would be for our second strategy, which is soar high. So positioning as a premium airline means we have to really improve on our service quality and also in our HR. So really making very strong HR efforts and also being able to improve quality through a very strong quality control team would be very essential to our success.
But with what you just said about the additional training, right, for the cabin crew, plus what you said about all this, it's going to jack up the costs, right? So on one hand, we are trying to lower the cost, but on the other hand, we have really increased the cost. So how are you going to achieve your target?
Yeah. Basically, what we plan to do is connect costs to revenues as much as possible, and this goes alongside making sure that our our payroll expenses could be as variable as possible to the revenues or to the amount of passengers that we could get, and that's why how we'll be able to pay off or pay these stewardesses or pilots is a bit in line towards the performance ratings of one particular company, the particular cabin crew. And these performance ratings will allow us to see, okay, because of your services, a lot more are coming in and a lot more revenues are coming in. So we could give you more expenses as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.